I think I've passed across this idea of knowledge which seems to exist outside of any kind of active human knowing. What I've been referring to as transcendent knowledge, although I'm not really happy with that term actually. But anyway, we have this idea that that some kind of, let's call it knowledge, but we could also call it data or information, seems to been around, precede human, the arrival of humans on the planet, and well, with some kinds of knowledge we do, and other kinds of knowledge it feels more natural to think of it as kind of co-evolving with people, or only being available when people are around. Social facts I've mentioned before. And what I'm thinking right now of is in terms of, well, just this idea of transcendent knowledge. What kind of systems of thought are we putting into place in order to be able to derive this understanding that we have about some knowledge being transcendent and some other knowledge perhaps not? And I suppose where I'm looking for a couple of places for this, but the initial starting point for this really is Robert Anton Wilson, science fiction writer, very entertaining writer, I think. And he had this kind of rewording that he had of the Copenhagen interpretation from quantum physics, which he'd kind of reworded, influenced by Korzybski, particularly Korzybski's idea of the map not being the territory. And Robert Anton Wilson's version of the Copenhagen interpretation is this. It says that let me just see if I get this right, the equations of quantum physics do not describe the quantum world, they describe what systems of thought we need to be able to create in order to be able to think about that world. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's what he said, or something like that. And what I like about it is that it absolutely includes the instrumentation of human knowing in an understanding of what knowledge is. I mean, in that particular case, it's knowledge of what might be completely unknowable, which is the materials of quantum mechanics. But the same general principle applies, that that knowing is always known by someone, or is always, certainly by the time it gets to us, it is known. And even if we change the terms and start talking about data or information, which on the face of it appear to be much more detached, much more inhuman in a way, much less bound up with the act of knowing, even those terms, I think if we spend a few minutes thinking about them, we realise that they only actually become valid when there is a knower. There isn't any information that isn't known, or it doesn't become information until it enters the realm of the known. We could kind of imagine information floating out around there, but there's no evidence that it exists. We just intuit that. We intuit that information and data exists before any kind of human engagement with it in the form of knowledge. Okay, so I guess what I'm thinking of there is, where does that structure of knowing come from? Because that kind of structure of knowing, which seems to be built around a subject in a relationship of knowing with some kind of object, where does that come from? And it seems to me, it feels to me like it's being mapped from object relations that we experience in lived experience, in the lived world. So for example, I won't use the cup, I've got a packet of biscuits here. So for example, I have this relationship with this packet of biscuits, perceptual relationships. Here am I, the subject, engaged in this act of seeing, and the object of that seeing is over there, it's this packet of biscuits. And I do that all the time. And that relationship might be an act of touching, or it might be an act of hearing, but or it might be some other kind of act, owning or something like that. So I'm engaged in all these acts with these real objects in the world around me, and every other human being is similarly engaged, and has been for as long as there have been human beings with sensory motor systems and some kind of cognitive processes and sensory modalities to engage with. So it seems to me that that structure, subject relationship object is probably as near to being hardwired as anything is. It's a deeply ingrained conceptual schema that informs our engagement with the world around us. And it's kind of the ultimate Cartesian moment as well, that here I am a subject kind of defined by my sets of intentional relationships with the entities around me. And I suspect that it's that schema which is being mobilized to provide a map, a metaphorical map, for this strange territory that we call knowledge. We don't know what the territory of knowledge is. We don't know what the territory of knowing is. There is no real map of the sum total of data out there in the universe. There's no natural map of that. There is only the maps that we create of that. And it seems to me that that one of the salient maps that we use to understand how we are knowing things and to structure that knowing is this subject-predicate-object relationship. So here am I in a relationship to an object of knowledge, and sometimes that object is very coherent and distant and seems to have an independent life of its own, and I can kind of imagine it having an independent life of its own, in which case I might think of it as a piece of what I've referred to as transcendent knowledge. And at other times that knowledge feels much more bound up with my actions, much closer to me, much more of the body, really, I suppose. Okay, I think that's all I want to say on that.